Hi, hello. I am back for part 2 of our fertility story. And here's Bella making her guest appearance again. Can you lay down, please? No? Okay. So it's been a whole 5 minutes since I filmed the first part. So this part is just going to be picking up where we left off in part 1 and continuing on to part 2 and hopefully only part 2 for this first section of doing fertility videos. So where we left off in video 1 was that we had gotten the news that we have female factor infertility with male factor complication, and we had found that out in about February of 2019, and it was very stressful. I'm somebody who deals with a lot of depression, anxiety. It was a lot for both of us, just finding out kind of how much more complicated things would be. So we took a break, and then, as I said in the last video, things happened with Maddie, and she was the main focus. I wasn't really concerned about doing anything else, but making sure that she was okay and getting through the beginning, terrifying part of her fight with ALL. So we took a break. Things finally calmed down with Maddie. She was finally kind of leveling out because that child is a drama queen. We'll talk about that in a different video. So where we left off was September of 2019. It was Scott and I's 10th wedding anniversary, which was awesome. And we decided to take a bigger trip than our typical, like Gatlinburg, Tennessee, Orlando, Florida, though I would have gone back there any day. And we went to Puerto Los Cabos, Mexico. It was absolutely incredible. It was so much fun. It was super hot. We spent all day, every day in the pool because otherwise you'll die. It was gorgeous. It was so much fun. But on the last night of our trip, we went out to dinner at one of the resort's restaurants, and we kind of started talking a little bit about the fertility stuff, because from that February, it was always on my mind, always on his mind as well, while other things had kind of popped in here and there that distracted us from it. It was always on our minds. We were always trying to decide, what are we going to do? Are we going to move forward? Are we going to stop? Are we going to look into other options? At that dinner, we decided that we were going to continue with fertility stuff, which meant that we were going to have to move forward with IUI, intrauterine insemination. So we got back like mid-September, I believe. Yeah. I think it was like the 13th or 14th of September that we got back to the US, got back home, and we had made that decision. So in October, I had called the doctor's office and let them know, hey, we're going to move forward. Let me know what I need to do as the first step. And they had said, you need to call it day 1 so that we can kind of set things back up. So obviously other things had to fall into place with supply for the insemination. So that all started back up in October of 2019. I called Dr. B's office to let them know that we're ready to move forward. We were going to go ahead and start with it. So they had told me to get prepared for morning monitoring. So I called them with day 1, like I said. And then I had to go in for morning monitoring that same week, I believe. Again, it was quite a while ago. It doesn't seem like that long ago, but it actually kind of was. So morning monitoring was the same as before, 6:15 to 9:30 or 6:30 to 9:15 in the morning. You'd just go in, first come, first serve, and you'd get your lab work done and your internal ultrasound. So I did that, and everything looked good at that point. So they prescribed me CLOMID, which is, it's more than just estrogen, but part of it was the estrogen supplement that I needed. So I would be taking that starting on day 5, and then taking it for 5 days. And then I would come in the next week to check my status again with blood work and with the internal ultrasound to kind of see where my body was at and what we needed to do. So I want to say the second week that I came in, for monitoring and the ultrasound, they said, hey, you're ready to go. Do you want to go ahead and do the insemination today? So I was like, yeah, let's get it done. I have 0 patients. Why not? So from there, I had to take an injection of the HCG hormone, which in my case, the prescription name for it was ovidrel. So I was terrified. I hate needles. Absolutely hate them. I can handle it when I'm having blood drawn because I'm not doing it. I can do this and I can look away. This ovidrel was a shot that had been sent to me by a fertility pharmacy, had been sitting in my refrigerator, and they were like, hey, bring it to your appointment just in case, so that if we're going to move forward with insemination that day, you can stick it in your belly and give yourself a shot. I was terrified. So thankfully that first day, one of the nurses in Dr. B's office said, would it make you more comfortable if I gave you the shot? Yeah. So she did. She kind of explained. So for me, I had to go, my belly button's hiding under my leggings. So 2 fingers underneath your belly button. So belly button's here, 2 fingers down, kind of pinch the skin and then jab it in. So I was terrified that this was going to hurt. Actually, I have one in the fridge, but it's still good if I don't pull it out of the fridge. So the needle for the ovidrel shot was actually super, super, super tiny. They call it, I think they call it a butterfly needle. I might be wrong, but it was super tiny. I didn't feel it, which I was terrified it was going to hurt so bad, but I didn't feel it at all. She pinched the skin, she jabbed it in there, and I didn't feel a thing. So she pushed the medication nice and slow, so I didn't feel a thing. It was perfectly fine, no big deal. But because we were going to go ahead with the IUI that day, it was going to take about an hour and a half for the lab to get everything ready to go. So the first thing I had to do, because this was like 6:45, 7 a.m., I had to go to a different suite in the physician's building for our hospital, where all my doctor's offices are out of, and I had to go register because this is considered like an outpatient procedure. So I had to go register, and then from registering, I would just go out and wait in my car because I vape and don't smoke, but I vape, so I needed nicotine because I was nervous. I didn't know what to expect. So I went out to my car and I hung out and waited for that hour and a half. When that hour and a half was up, it was time to go back in. So I want to backtrack a little bit here because I did miss kind of a big thing. So what they had determined, my first visit after day 1 was just blood work and ultrasound. They were checking my estrogen and my progesterone levels, and then ultrasound, they were checking status of follicles. Follicles are essentially what holds the egg on your ovary. So they wanted to check to see what the progress of that was. So the very first appointment, everything apparently was what it was doing, what it was supposed to be doing. So at that second appointment, second or third, but I think it was the second, when they did the ultrasound, they saw that there was, because I was taking the ovidrel, it was multiple follicles. So a normal menstrual cycle, you will produce 1 follicle depending on what month. So say this month you are ovulating from the right side, so your right ovary will produce a follicle. And then next month it'll be your left ovary and it'll produce a follicle. So with the ovidrel, it boosts everything. So instead of 1, I don't know that first month how many follicles I had, but I had at least 5 between the 2 ovaries. So what they check to see if you're ready for IUI is the size of those follicles. So I have to be, I believe, 16 millimeters or larger, and I might be wrong. I'm kind of double thinking myself now, maybe it was like 20, but it has to be a certain size. Your fertility nurse or doctor will tell you what size. Once it's that size, that's when they're going to say, okay, let's go. So that's what had happened that morning at my appointment. My blood work wouldn't be back right away, but my follicles looked good. It was time to move ahead. So I'd gone out to my car, waited that hour and a half, and then I came back up. All my nurses are amazing. Thankfully, I still see all the same nurses. So they're just like, all right, cool, let's go in. And my office actually has 2 exam rooms, and room 1 is always freezing cold. So the nurses, if they can, they'll always put you in 2 because it's warm. The ultrasound machine isn't a warmer, so it's much more comfortable. So you go back in and they're like, okay, we're going to put you in room 2. We're going to move ahead with the process. So, basically, it was the same as my normal morning monitoring. I had to go in, strip down from the waist down, sit on the little bed, cover myself with a little blanket, and wait for the nurses to come in. So they come in, and it was 2 nurses for the actual IUI. So you had 1 nurse that was operating the ultrasound machine, and then the other nurse was going to perform the insemination. So, excuse me. this ultrasound is done on your belly. So it's the normal, they like squirt the crap on there and then they use the T looking ultrasound thing and get an idea. So you have to have a full bladder for this, or a pretty full bladder. So they get an idea so that the other nurse can place a catheter at the top of your uterus again, which is super uncomfortable. It's a pinching thing. And they tell you, don't tense up, don't tense up. You're gonna tense up, it hurts. So they place the catheter at the top of your uterus and then they push the specimen through and just leave it at the top of your uterus. Then they would leave the room. They would have me, so the beds that they had over there, they would like lay you down and then lift your butt up for 20 minutes. So just kind of lay there. Thankfully I would have my phone. I could look on, I don't know, Facebook, text my husband, whatever. And then they'd come back in after 20 minutes and say you're good to go. Go ahead, get up, get dressed. I think one of the nurses, every single time I was in there, said, the only restriction is no jumping on trampolines today. Okay. So that was it. So I would go get dressed, finish up there for the day, and then I'd go to work. And then the waiting starts, which is at that point very exciting. Very exciting, optimistic. Looking at my notes here, sorry. So from the CLOMID, I didn't really notice any side effects from that. A little bit of bloating, but the nurses had always told me that that was normal regardless of the CLOMID. I always felt like I noticed it more when I was taking the CLOMID, but that could just be the power of suggestion. So then after the IUI, they would tell me, I think it was like 3 to 5 days later, they would say to start the progesterone. So that is where I felt most of my side effects, was the progesterone. It made me feel super, super tired. I was taking it twice a day at first. So it made me really tired, made me bloated. I was also at this point taking prenatals every day. And those, I haven't found one yet that doesn't make me nauseous. I can handle it. I've had a lot of stomach issues, so I've never had the prenatal make me actually get sick, but it can be uncomfortable for a good hour, hour and a half for me. So after the IUI and taking the progesterone, that was a 2-week wait. So you have IUI and then it was a, I believe, 12-day wait before test day. So optimistic, happy, excited, but I had also done a little bit of like looking and researching and found that chances of IUI working on the first round are pretty slim. I want to say it was like a 5 to 10% chance. So obviously I wanted to be optimistic and excited and things like that, but I was trying to keep myself kind of level and knowing what to expect. So the morning of day 12, after the IUI, as soon as I woke up, my alarm went off. As soon as I knew what things were, my whole body was shaking. I didn't even know I was nervous yet, but my entire body was shaking. So Scott knew what morning it was. He knew that we were, it was test morning. So my whole body's shaking. I couldn't stop. It was just awful. I went straight to the bathroom, did the test, peed on the stick, did the thing, shaking ridiculously the whole time. I left the test upside down on the bathroom counter, and I went to the kitchen to wait out the 3 minutes with Scott. And of course he's just hugging me because he can see me shaking like a leaf at this point. So the 3 minutes was up. I went back to the bathroom, I grabbed the test, I brought it to the kitchen, I turned it around, not pregnant. I was definitely disappointed, but it didn't ruin my day. I kind of expected it to be negative at that point. Obviously you're going to be sad. This is something that I've been wanting and hoping for years and years and years. So when that test says negative, this is not my first negative pregnancy test either. There've been multiple other times where I'd taken one thinking maybe, but I was still disappointed. It still sucked, but I didn't let it ruin my day. I went to work, called Dr. B's office and let them know, hey, negative pregnancy test. What do we do from here? So I had heard back from them and they basically gave me I want to say the generic but I do truly feel like they care about their patients. So it was, I'm so sorry, call it day 1 of your next cycle. So I'm not their only patient. They've been through this a million times before, but I do think they care. They act like they care, and I trust my doctor and my nurses. So, it was, sorry to hear that, call it day 1, stop taking the progesterone. So I stopped taking the progesterone that day, which would essentially, within a day or two, start up my next period, which just kind of starts the whole cycle again. So after I called in with day 1 the next month, because we went right at it again the second month, I called with day 1. They said we needed to come in on day 3 for a baseline ultrasound. So I set that up, went in. Basically, they were just checking to make sure that, checking the ovaries, the uterus, all of that, make sure everything kind of went back to level, went back to normal. So I went in. On day 3, everything was good. We're looking good. We're going to keep going for the IUI on the same pattern. So we waited. I think it was the 3rd week. So 2 weeks in, they said, okay, we're going to start the CLOMID again. You're going to take it on day 5, 4 or 5 days in a row. So I did that. And then I went back in at this point it would have been, so baseline first week, second week. I went back in for blood work and ultrasound. They said, hey, we're ready to go. Do you want to go ahead with the IUI? So we did the same thing again. This time I gave myself the shot because this time I knew it wouldn't hurt. So I was able to just jab myself. And then I went out to my car and I waited the hour and a half while everything was prepared and went back up. This looked exactly like the last time. Same nurses. Catheter, did the whole thing all over again, the same IUI. Normal procedure. So then we go to, everything worked out fine. Everything gets placed. I wince, it hurts, no fun. Go to work, and then we wait 2 weeks. So day 12 again, I wake up. I know it's test day before I'm even awake. My entire body's shaking again. This I hate. I absolutely hate this because I wake up with my entire body shaking. It's uncomfortable, but it's nerves. Like I just know before I'm even alert what's happening that day. So I'm shaking, horrible feelings, got waited again before he went to work so that I'd go test and then come out and let him know. So the same thing happened. I went in, I tested, I came back out after the 3 minutes, checked the test, not pregnant. Second negative test of fertility. Definitely a little more disappointed this time. But a lot of what I've been reading said that once you get to the third or fourth attempt at IUI, that's when your chances start to go up. So I was kind of hopeful that, okay, first time didn't work, we kind of expected that. Second time didn't work, this sucks, but third time's a charm. Duh. So I call the doctor's office again, letting them know, hey, it didn't work. Same thing happened. Stop taking the progesterone, call it day 1, we're sorry. So trying to see where I'm at in my little notes here. We tried again the next month, the very next month. This time I was a little more excited because for the 3rd attempt, if it worked, I was going to find out like December 14th, 15th-ish if I was pregnant. And if I was pregnant, that meant that I could surprise my family for Christmas and I could think of some cute, corny little thing to surprise them all with, to say, hey, Merry Christmas, we're having a baby. So I was super optimistic this time. Went in, called with day 1, went in for my baseline. Everything looked good. The 3rd week in, after doing the morning maintenance and all of that stuff, morning monitoring, they said, hey, we're ready to go. IUI, do you want to move ahead this morning? So I said yes. We did the typical wait, gave myself a shot, went out, waited, came back in. We did the IUI. This time it was a little bit different. This time the nurse that placed the catheter and actually put the specimen in was that nurse that reminded me of my aunt in the first video. So it just felt right. It felt really good. She really made me comfortable. She's so, so, so nice. Really reminds me of just one of my favorite aunts that I've always been closest to. And the whole day I just kept telling myself, the whole morning before I even got to the doctor's office, third time's a charm, third time's a charm. Something's different. It's going to work this time. Everything's going to work out fine. So I go in, this nurse does the procedure. It didn't hurt a bit. I didn't feel anything. Like, everything was perfect. It was done. I waited my 20 minutes. I headed off to work, and we waited the 2 weeks again. This time, instead of 12 days, they told me to wait 14 days, just in case. So, super optimistic and happy this is gonna work this time. Day 14 comes along, and I wake up shaking because it's just what I do. Horrible feeling again, but this time I didn't remind Scott the night before that the next day was testing day. So I didn't remind him. So that morning, I just let him go to work. I didn't remind him that I was testing that day. I shook, but I tried to hide it and let him go off to work, because just in case it was negative, it was going to be a little easier on me I thought it might be easier on me if he wasn't there that morning telling me everything's going to be okay, we're just going to try again, it's fine. I just thought it would be easier, and it just felt different this time. So I let him go to work. I went as soon as he left, and I tested. And I waited those 3 minutes that for some people can feel like a lifetime waiting for those results. For me, it goes way too fast because I'm so nervous and anxious about the results. So the 3 minutes was up like that, and I checked the test, and I'm not pregnant. This time I cried. This is the first time I cried. Not for a long time, but I did cry. I was really disappointed. I had been so excited to surprise our families. I'd even put off buying Christmas presents because I was hoping that I could just do that for Christmas, but that's what I get. So I was pretty sad, upset. Let Scott know. He was a little annoyed with me that I didn't have him wait that morning. But it was what it was. I finished getting ready for work, headed to work, and then I called Dr. B's office and I let them know that we had another negative pregnancy test. So the same result from that as normal. We're so sorry. Call with day 1, stop taking progesterone. So the cycle starts again. So that was the third time. So on day 3, day 3 of my cycle, I was supposed to come in for baseline. So I went in for my baseline, and at that baseline, where all of the other baselines, they've gone in, done the ultrasound, everything looked great. We're just gonna keep going. This time I actually had a 5mm cyst on one of my ovaries, my right one, I believe. So what had happened was when I stopped taking the progesterone and the CLOMID and everything, my body didn't stop producing estrogen. So one of the follicles didn't ovulate, so it just turned into a cyst. So it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So we couldn't do anything for the next month. We couldn't move forward with IUI, so we had to take a break. So that sucked. I was disappointed, but I got it. There's nothing, they're not gonna let you move forward, so you have to deal with it. So ironically, they put me on birth control for a month. So it was super fun. It was for 3 weeks. I just didn't take the little sugar pill. I'd never taken birth control before, so it was kind of a new experience for me. So about a week and a half into the birth control, it was around Christmas time. So Maddie at this point has been doing chemo, different phases of chemo. So at this phase of chemo, she was starting her inpatient chemo. So that day, it was a Friday, the whole family was planning to go up to the hospital where she's seen for all of her stuff, for everything with her leukemia, because they were doing Meet Santa, and all of the kids, the hospital patients, could get gifts and their siblings would get gifts and things like that. So we were going to take, Maddie was already going to be there because she had to have labs that day. She had her normal clinic that day, and then my brother, her dad, and his girlfriend Kaylee were taking Ashlyn, Maddie's little sister, up to see Santa. So ultimately they determined during her clinic that she was good to go for chemo that day, so she didn't get to go see Santa. Instead, she was admitted to the hospital for chemo. But the nurses still did a bunch of fun little stuff for her, brought her little like crafts and treats and things like that. and the family was still able to go and visit with her. So I went up, I visited with her. Her hospital where she's seen is closest to me, so I was able to go up there, hanging out. And at one point, so with the cyst that I had developed, I had been told that it was either going to burst and cause an obnoxious amount of pain that sometimes people will go to the ER for, or it would, with the birth control, it would just slowly go away and I wouldn't notice anything. So I'm at the hospital playing with Maddie, playing with her little sister, Ash, who at that point is just over a year old. And Ash had been jumping on me. So I had her on my lap, she's jumping up and down because she's a Tasmanian devil. And at one point I kind of moved around and I had a really strong pain in my like stomach region. And so I was like, okay, there it goes, it burst. Got over the pain pretty quickly, and then the next week I had to go back to Dr. B's office to have another ultrasound done to check the status of the cyst. So as soon as I walked in, I was like, oh, it's good. No, you know, it burst last Friday. I felt that it sucked, but we should be good to go. Everything should be fine. Nope. She did the ultrasound and it had actually gotten bigger. So I was basically just told to rest, relax, be careful, to not, sorry, I have to put this on mute or it's going to keep making that weird dinging noise. Just not do anything strenuous to hopefully not burst it, because the biggest issue with that would be if the cyst kept growing and growing, ultimately my ovary could twist on itself, which would cut off its blood supply and potentially lead to me having to lose that ovary. Kind of detrimental to the process. So I kept having to go in for different ultrasounds to check the status of it. And it did, I think on week 3 was when I had gone in and they were like, it's good, it's gone, we're good to go, we can start again next month. All right, cool, we lost a month, but that's okay. 2020 is gonna be my year. 2020's just been so awesome so far. So I'm back in January and started at the beginning, went and did my testing, called day 1. 2 weeks later, I went in and everything looked good to go. I had, at that point, it was a ridiculous amount of follicles. I remember, I think the week after IUI, I still had 26 follicles left, which is ridiculous when you're only supposed to be producing 1 per side, like 1 total per month. So apparently CLOMID works really good for me. So I'd gone in the second week through. Are you ready to proceed with IUI? Yes, I do my shot. I wait the hour and a half. I come back in. We do the procedure. This time it was the first nurse I had done the 2 previous times. So I've done IUI 4 times. This 4th time, though, I did forget to mention, for 3 days the week before IUI, I had to give myself an injection of a drug called follistim. So basically it does what it sounds like. It stimulates the follicles. So I'd done that, same type of needle as that HCG shot. I didn't feel it. It was just a quick, give myself a shot in the belly 3 nights in a row, and then we went ahead with IUI. So IUI, first nurses the first 2 times. Felt the pinch, it was kind of painful. Went through the process, waited the 20 minutes, went back to work, and then waited for the 2 weeks. At the end of the 2 weeks, it was test day. So this time Scott wasn't going to let me not remind him that it was test day. He knew it was test day. So he waited around. I went ahead, I went in, I tested, and then I waited the 5 minutes this time because I'd gotten a different kind of pregnancy test. Shaking as normal. I'll never understand why my body does that, but it's terrible and I hate it. So 4th time around, we waited the 5 minutes and I went back in, I checked the test and it was negative again. So this time I was devastated. I cried for about a week. It was bad. It was the worst one that I had gone through. I just didn't, at that point you don't understand. You don't understand what you're doing wrong. You don't understand why, you know, the typical, why can, you know, all of these other people have kids and I can't? What am I doing wrong? You just don't get it. So it was really rough. It was really hard. I didn't want to continue with everything because I don't want to feel that way again. But I can't give up either. I want to be a mom too bad, that I can't give up. So that was hard. That was a hard couple of weeks. I really struggled with that. I still struggle with it. It was just really hard. It sucked a lot. I didn't know what to do. So when I went back in, I had to go back in. I had to call with day one. At that point, I didn't know that I wanted to call with day one, but I knew I had to because I still had to be checked out because of the cysts I had gotten the previous month. So I called with day one. They had me come in on day 3 for another ultrasound to check baseline. And at baseline ultrasound, I had 2 cysts. So I had one on each ovary. The biggest the first cyst got to was 6 millimeters, so it was about 2.5 inches roughly wide. The second set of cysts were 2 and 3. One was 2, one was 3 millimeters, so it wasn't too bad. But they did tell me you're gonna have to start on birth control again for a month, which I still think is ironic because I don't really need it. But the hormones in it is what helps get rid of the cysts. So at that appointment, at the end of the appointment, I asked my nurse, same nurse who had done my ultrasounds, just kind of met me there every week. I asked her, can we set an appointment with Dr. B to discuss other options? At this point, we had been notified that Dr. B had decided he was going to retire in 2020. Not cool. I get it. He's worked really hard. He's done great things and he's ready to retire, but I'm comfortable with him. So she had promised me, no, he's retiring. He's not going to see any new patients, but he's going to continue to see his old patients through June of 2020. Okay, cool. I won't have to worry about getting a new doctor. I can go see him. I can meet with him on what the next steps will be. So we did that. We waited. It took, I think, three or 4 weeks before we could get a consultation with him. So I was able to kind of get through those first 2 weeks where I was really upset and devastated. And it's hard because you don't really have anyone to talk to about it except your significant other. But then it gets to a point when you're doing fertility that's all you talk about, because it's just so important to you and you can't help it. It's rough. So we got through that. We had our next consultation with Dr. B because I wanted to discuss IVF to see if that was an option for us. And get through my notes here to get down to that. We set up an appointment with Dr. B, went in to see him, and it took about an hour. We came in for that appointment, sat in the waiting room for about an hour, which was really frustrating. But his office was, because he had, part of him announcing that he was retiring, a new clinic was kind of coming in and taking over. So things were kind of changing up, things were happening. So we sat in the waiting room that day for an hour and it was extremely frustrating. But during that appointment, I did have to go in. They actually called us back. Scott went to the consultation room. I went to the ultrasound room so they could check on those 2 cysts. And the cysts were gone. I had been on birth control for a month and they were gone already. So we went in, we waited, and we talked to Dr. B about IVF. Long story short, he approved. He said IVF is definitely an option for us. That we would probably have to wait, and we would start. Originally, I was supposed to start taking meds in the middle of March. So injections, all of that stuff, so that we could do the egg retrieval in the beginning of April, so roughly around now, and then a fresh transfer like the middle of April. So all of that goes through. Because Dr. B's office was being taken over by a new clinic, they had a new checklist of items. So back in my first video, I explained the checklist of items that I had to kind of go through for my testing with Dr. B. So we kind of went through the list, and I had to get that full blood panel again, that ton of blood work done again. So I was already there. They went ahead and did the blood work, and it was 8 vials of blood, which sucked, and I was shaky and still had to drive to work afterwards, which was fun. But we finished our appointment with Dr. B. Everything was good. We went about our day and waited for them to get a hold of us and let us know what the next step was going to be. I, at that point, had assumed that the next step was going to be they'd call me to bring me in for what they call a teach, so that they could explain to me what meds to take when, how this is going to work, how everything lays out. But instead, I got a call from their office again. Oh, and during that appointment, we found I had to have one other test done for IVF, a saline ultrasound. So we scheduled that. But between leaving that appointment that day and the saline ultrasound, I got another call from that nurse that I saw every time that I'd go in. And she said, hey, we got your blood work back from that huge amount of blood that we took from you. And you don't show that you're immune to rubella. Yeah, so I explained that I didn't understand how that could happen because we had found out before that I had the original MMR vaccine when I was 1, and then I had that rubella booster in February of 2019. How am I not immune? She says, I don't know, but the doctor says that you have to have a rubella booster done. This is going to push you out a month, at least a month, because once you get that rubella booster, it's a live thing that they're putting into you. So they cannot proceed with treatment for 30 days. So at this point, I'm kind of pissed, frustrated. I've been waiting a long time. I don't have patience, but it is what it is. He had told me all that time ago, really about a year ago, that he won't work with somebody who's not immune to rubella. So I kind of get a flash. I remember that. I call my doctor's office, my primary doctor, and I set up the appointment for the rubella booster. That appointment gets set, but then I start kind of looking into it. When I Google, yeah, I know, Google, Dr. Google, great. I Google people who've had the rubella shot, the MMR vaccine, but don't show immunity. And this thing comes up from Mayo Clinic and things like that, saying that some women will not have an immunity to rubella. You can have that shot 16 times if you want to, but you're never going to have that immunity. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happens. You're not going to have that immunity. At this point, I panic because Dr. B had told me that he will not ever work with a patient who is not immune to rubella because of this issue with a mother getting rubella and then the serious side effects of rubella on the fetus. So I start panicking. I start sending messages to Dr. B's office. Is this it? Are we just done? I'm in a panic, just frantic, a mess. I'm just devastated again, freaking out, bawling. I don't know what to do. And the only responses that I got from Dr. B's office were kind of your typical blanket responses. Yeah, from my nurses. I don't know. You just have to get the booster. We can check your blood again in 30 days. They couldn't tell me, yeah, we're going to be done if you're not immune. And they couldn't tell me, no, you're fine. So it was really tough. For about 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks for that. It was really hard. To the point where I ultimately just had decided that, okay, if this is it, if he's going to decide that he can't work with me anymore, then I'm going to have to find a new doctor because I'm not done. I'm not done. I'm not giving up. So this is just how it's going to have to work. So at this point, we're in March 2020. Nothing else exciting happened in March 2020 except the entire world shut down. So I get a call from one of my nurses at Dr. B's office, and she says, hey, hoping this just makes you feel a little bit better. Because of COVID-19, we are pushing off all IVF treatments until April. Everything's getting pushed back a month anyway. I hope that, you having to have that rubella booster and being pushed off 30 days, hopefully that makes you feel better. It doesn't. I still don't know. Things are still up in the air. I don't know if he's even going to see me anymore. So about a week after that, I get a notification saying I have a new message in the messaging application that they use for my doctor's office. And it was a message from that first nurse that reminds me so much of my aunt. And she said, because they're under this new fertility group, if my blood work comes back and it still says I don't have an immunity to rubella, they're going to have me sign a waiver saying that I know that and I'm okay with moving forward, and we move forward. So that lifted so much off my shoulders that day. That was huge. So it made me really happy. Obviously, I'm going to do whatever I can to avoid getting anything like that if I get pregnant. But I'm not ready to be done. So just knowing that I can continue to work with the same nurses and the same doctor at this point through the end makes me feel so much better. So it was great news that we're going to move forward with IVF. So that's where we're at right now. We're going to move forward with IVF. The catch is, because of COVID-19, Dr. B was not planning on retiring until June of 2020. Dr. B is older. I really don't know how old he is, but he would be considered high risk for COVID-19. So he has decided to retire now. So this doctor that I begged and begged and begged to be able to continue seeing through the end has retired. He's gone. So I got a note about a week ago saying that he has officially retired. It is April 3rd of 2020 right now. I got a note about a week ago. Surprisingly, I didn't panic. A little part of me panicked, because I kind of freaked out a little bit. But immediately, the way that they told me he retired was, hey, he retired. We're sorry to let you know that. We know how serious you were about staying with him, but things are kind of out of his control right now. He has to, for his own safety, retire because of the virus. We are going to set up an appointment for you immediately so that you can meet with your new doctor. We're going to make this as easy on you as we possibly can. So this past Tuesday, the 31st, I believe. Yeah, the 31st of March, I had a video conference because it was the safest thing with COVID-19 with my new fertility doctor, Dr. E. So right now we're just waiting. As of this moment, I am on track to start medications, injections on April 10th. It could be delayed, we don't know. It just depends on what happens with this virus. If people decide to follow the rules, to stay home, stay safe, then things might be able to proceed as usual. I am going to continue to self-isolate. I have been lucky enough that my work has said that that's fine, you stay home, family first. They know what's going on, they know what we're working toward, so they're fine with it. So I'm still going to work from home until things are safer. And as of right now, we're still good to go. Things could change, like I said, at any second. Just depends on the virus. But that is our fertility story to this point. Things could be changing soon. With any luck, in the next 7 days, the only thing that changes is that I receive a bunch of needles and meds in the mail, and I have to start sticking myself, which I'm terrified of, but I am totally willing to do because this is my dream. This is what I want. And we'll see where it goes from here. I've got a good support system. I've got some people who I'm sure are watching this, so thank you for being supportive and for being there for me and rooting for me, and we'll see where it goes from here. So that is it. That is my fertility story. Thank you so much for watching. I want to continue to keep doing videos. I do plan on doing a video about Miss Maddie at some point, but I do want to get permission of her parents before I do that. So I will do that. If there's any other videos you would like to see, I was going to say a day in the life, but there's not really much to see in a day in my life. So thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking around. I'll see you again soon. Thanks. Bye.